Welcome everybody. How's everybody doing out there? What's up? This is Anon saying, how are you? Hope you are doing good. All right. So, the topic of my conversation tonight, my talk tonight, is you are under a spell. The hypnosis of everyday life. That's right. You're under a spell, man. They got you under a spell. They got you locked down. Yeah, my this is kind of like a further discussion on parts from, again, Quantum Psychology by Robert Anton Wilson, and uh, just getting open about aspects of these books. This book too, The Sociobiology of Mind Body Healing, and what insights they have for analyzing this idea of hypnosis and what is hypnosis, right? A lot of people just associate real quick hypnosis with that spinning, that oscillating watch in front of your face, right? Hypnosis uh, uh, can be described very vulgarly as a procedure of relaxing someone enough to then slip into a state of consciousness that then one is implanted or planted with uh, uh, some behavior to do when they get a post-hypnotic suggestion by the hypnotist, like snapping of fingers, and then the person barks like a dog or some shit like that, right? um, for the most part, this is the furthest understanding that most of us have of the concept of hypnosis. um, but it's a huge field of psychology, and most people, well, who knows? Did you know? I'll pose it like this: that Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, began his study of psychology, or right before him coming up with the breakthrough of psychoanalysis, he studied hypnosis, right? And Freud came up with psychoanalysis in around 1896, and utilizing hypnosis, according to Ernest Rossi, the hypnotherapist, um, utilizing hypnotherapy, hypnosis as a form of therapy, uh, is, it goes back perhaps to Mesmer, right? Franz Mesmer, you know. But as a more, I don't know, maybe they had a journal by 1885. That's what Rossi is saying, that this guy Braid, in 1885, Bernheim, was it Bernheim Braid? Well, this individual, who studied hypnosis and sought to give it some terminology to understand it as scientifically as possible, right? And so hypnosis very quickly can be described as like a state dependent memory system, right? And what that what that means, in a sense, is a state dependent memory system, is just basically a state of consciousness, right? Um, and Wilson calls this a state specific information system, right, in quantum psychology, and he applies this to the eighth circuit model of intelligence, right? So each imprinted level within people's selves, one may function off of the heavy first circuit imprint throughout the course of the day, or one may function off your heavy second circuit imprint off the course of the day. So perhaps you got really hungry, and that's hitting on your first circuit level of awareness, or your imprint. And so you're hangry, people are hangry, right? And going around, get the fuck out of my way, I need my cheeseburgers, or whatever, and is this the same individual that later on is hugging people and telling their grandmother I love you, and fucking giving people thumbs up and applauding for people and watching happy movies, like this this is the discussion that Wilson is getting into, this notion of self and the idea of a non-essential self, right? That uh, when one is examining oneself, exploring one's internal environments and landscapes, kind of like the talk I was doing last night about a meditation on the organism as a whole, interacting with environment as a whole, analyzing the environment, right? And I was analyzing environment as being groups of people in physical environments and how everyone interacts, but focusing now on internal environments a little bit and internal landscapes. That's something that, I mean, the people from the 60s counterculture, that's one of their major contributions to this larger discussion of finding more maps, if you will, for internal landscapes, basically metaphors to utilize to discuss subjective experiences. That those motherfuckers in the 60s, they're dropping crazy acid, they're doing all types of fucking drugs, and those, or as John Lilly said, he didn't like the term drugs. They were just taking chemicals. They're taking all these chemicals and altering their consciousness and observing these different parts of themselves. And motherfuckers on coke, those are different. That's a different motherfucker than a dude on some heavy downers. That dude on coke, he's jibber jabbering all motherfucking night long. Like, so you turn it down a notch and you drink some coffee and you smoke some good sativa, and you activate your verbal state. So according to Wilson, and his 8th circuit model of intelligence, I am coming from a very third circuit place of this semantic, verbal form of intelligence, and the chemicals of which that are partly influencing that maybe is coffee, which is that very, very slight, amphetamine, and then a little bit of sativa. Sativa weed is the activating principle of these strains, if you will. So speaking of you providing an example of self in this, what Wilson further says when he's uh, applying Rossi's phrase of like, it's kind of Wilson's paraphrase of Rossi's statement of state dependent memory and learning, right? Like Wilson calls it the state dependent information system, which is kind of he's using this to get a little more specific, because when we think of self, it's kind of a something that oftentimes is not questioned much, especially when you are interacting with other organisms in environments, like other people in the world, and yourself is within the boundaries and the confines of your body, right? So you have to maintain your internal and external boundaries while negotiating space and time with other people seeking to satiate your basic survival needs, right? Food, clothes, and shelter, right? Every day. And however, when we get these opportunities to draw our attention inward a little bit and analyze, observe, contemplate the internal landscapes that we have within inside of us, excuse me, certain observations might emerge. One of which, taken at least, or the first, well, one of which is this idea of the continuity of self, right? and I was first introduced in this term to this term and idea, I guess, through studying Buddhism, right? And the principle there, or the statement, or whatever you would call it, the observation, really, that the we have a myth of continuity of this idea of who we are, right? And another way to put that is this discovery, and Wilson would use this as an example a lot, of basically when you're in a bad mood, and you think about your life, right? What are you, what experiences from your memory are coming to mind, right? Wilson says that, well, so do a lot of people, not just Wilson. He was seeking to quote, modern science at that point. So this notion that when you're in a bad mood, you tend to only remember the shitty things in your life and the shitty people that you've had to deal with, right? And then when you're in a good mood, you tend to remember the cool people that you met and the great experiences that you've had in your life, right? And this is an interesting experiment to try out if you haven't done this yet. And if you have, it's fun to do again, because this principle of our minds as we have them right now is we are constantly forgetting. We're fucking constantly forgetting these simple fucking principles that can just make things a little bit easier, and one of those principles is just remembering that, like, when you're in a shitty mood, your life is not shit. You know what I mean? Like, it may seem that way at that moment in time, because, like, that's organically and physically actually what your body is producing. It could just be I mean, I don't know what the exact anatomy physiological breakdown of a shitty mood is, but I know that that's what there's plenty of, I think, neuroscientists who are seeking to study that, and that's worthy of studying. And again, I think that's what Wilson and Leary are trying to do. And what Wilson is trying to do in this book is to chart a certain, to chart the networks, like, literally, right, in these, or around these imprint points, what current neuroscience calls the critical periods, right? And those, or another metaphor, perhaps, is, I think, the yoga metaphor of sankharas, right? These deep, an imprint is a very good term for it, like, because it's very visual. Like, an imprint is literally this indentation within a physical form that forces something into a locked grid. So if something is imprinted in some sort of structure, well, then the flow of whatever is coming, whether, say, it's water, is going to flow through that imprinted area that has been crafted out, if you will. And that we have these moments of hyper or mega, I was going to say plasticity, but it's more so we have these moments of where, like, our mind body takes this picture, if you will, and then that sets in, and that's at the substrate of all these other ways that we process information in the world, like information signals around us happening, like, fucking, I don't even know the amount, like, so much. And that our whole body mind is about buffering all this information, and if that's the case, says like Wilson and Leary, is then it's not so much that all of this is pure chaos, and then we can project and choose. We can create a map and project it out and choose to live like that, right? As I think Adam Curtis was saying about Kerry Thornley and Greg Hill, because that's an interesting notion too. That leads to this idea of pretty much like LARPing, right? That you could create your own reality and project it out there, and somehow your reality will supersede the chaos that is out there. You know, that that's in the other another parlance, that's called putting the wisdom before the knowledge, if you will, you know, or mixing up your motherfucking ass with your elbow, thinking that you could fucking change the world around you by just fucking thinking so, you know. It's not exactly how all this works, right? And that's not what this idea of where Wilson is going with this exploration of psychoneuroimmunology, that like if you just think positive thoughts, that all of a sudden you're going to be fucking better. You know, that's not what this neuropsychological approach that Leary and Wilson are putting out there. That's not what they're saying. You know, what they're saying is you have to learn how to view your internal landscapes, and this is the importance of doing the knowledge of all these other people that came before you, that have studied their internal landscapes and have distilled as much as possible, as scientifically as possible, objective features that can also be observed by other people, utilizing their body minds as the laboratory, which is what you're doing when you're meditating or you're doing yoga or you're involved in you're like in an ayahuasca circle, or you're at like perhaps whatever else, the transpersonal psychological situations that you might be in, right? Where you know, but if you're putting that focus on observing, utilizing your mind body as the laboratory, then there's a protocol that you have to follow, right? And Wilson is at least writing about here is a protocol you could follow, and I think that's something where that's where he liked what magic had to offer, the study of, or now the Western esoteric tradition, where there is this tradition, this hermetic tradition, that leads into this you know, esoteric traditional whatever study of basically internal landscapes, right? That magicians will they have their magic diaries, right? And in those diaries they have to pay attention to specific parts, you know, what was going on operationally around your ritual, right? And your ritual is then can, you know, also be called your experiment, you know, your scientific experiment of your own consciousness, looking inside and studying your subtle body, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, again, there's all these different really interesting maps that people have used to get acquainted with their psychological operations, right? Gaining knowledge of self, you know, not knowledge of self in the sense of knowing where you came from and who your father, grandfather, et cetera was. That's one type of knowledge of self. But this knowledge of self of, okay, here you are now in this organic body right now. How do you make sense and be this point of processing, like a processing coordinate point, right? A conscious coordinate point, making sense of this world around you, you know, and doing that, um, you know, it's one then needs to learn further skills of greater refinement, being able to refine your ability to describe what's happening within you, and then what's happening directly around you, and then the ability to process the information that you is not happening directly in your environment, but is being told to you of what's happening way the fuck over there. You know, generally now it's through our doom scrolling fucking social media sites. This is where we find out, oh, this fucked up thing's happening there, and that fucked up thing's happening there. All these fucked up things are happening, and you open the window, what do you hear? Fucking birds chirping and fucking crickets at night, right? Not everyone, not everyone. I know. It's kind of like it's a little Bill Hicks joke. You know what I mean? But where do I go with this? Right? There are a number of different really fun, interesting maps, if you will, that can be used to analyze this information that Andrew Candela says is rampant, both external and internal. And yeah, this is true, man. We are, surrounded by a non-simultaneously apprehending universe of meaning, like shit's just popping off all the motherfucking time, right? How do you live your life while shit's popping off all the motherfucking time? Well, things don't get totally blown out the frame. We have contributions that humanity has given to us right now, which we contribute into the future of understanding this fucking this material. The human form has not changed in a couple thousand years, 4,000, 5,000 fucking years for all we know right now. Maybe we're all a little bit taller now. I don't fucking know, right? But for the most part, brain matter still mostly the fucking same, right? So people have learned different ways of digesting and making sense of all this wild shit that the even making sense of dreams and being able to talk about dreams. A dream is such a subjective experience. It's I'm going to touch a little bit on. I'm fucking tangentializing all over here, but for another video, perhaps I want to talk about this idea of what the fuck is it called? Well, finite. This guy Alfred Schultz, he was a phenomenologist. He was taught by Herself, right? And he is important because he's got this really interesting description of basically an internal landscape that holds meaning for people. And I want to get the fucking the name right. And I have it here. Yeah, cool. All right. So it's this notion of the finite province of meaning, right? And dreams exist within this finite province of meaning. These are basically notions that are just your own. It's your internal landscape that only you have a connection with, right? And it's a finite province of meaning. If you're able to get in, just open your eyes to your own like inner meaning and things that are meaningful that are happening all the fucking time, like this alone is a positive experience, right? And this notion of a finite province of meaning, that's one area of a map that's provided that people can look at to study one's interaction of internal with external, your organism as a whole interacting with environment as a whole. I'm going to save that for another video, the work of Alfred Schutz. And shout out to Michael Johnson, who hit me to this guy. Alfred Schutz was, he influenced the people who wrote that book, Social Construction of Reality, which is, I think it's one argument or one description of this is the constructivist aspect of, how humans have created reality, these environments that these superstructures that seem like that's the way it is. This is the way it is. So it can't be a different way. This is the way it is. That's reality. Well, it's reality because people created it. And if people created it, people can recreate another superstructure reality, right? So one thing that some people have done, right, is, or people do is constantly, right? you create the reality, you create the game, and then people try to say, well, this game is the way it is. No, it's not. No, it's not, right? But the human mind has this ability to let itself be fooled and to fool itself. So when you start, say you do a meditation retreat and whatnot, like I'll give a for instance. And it should be known, like I'm not a mega meditator either. I've done a few meditation retreats in my life and they've been amazing. But even I fucking struggle with meditating every day. Like I don't do it. I'm getting caught up in the wheel of samsara too, but that is what it is, man. That's a big part of all this shit. You can't fucking yell at yourself to meditate every day, because that completely defeats the purpose of meditating. Right? But some great insights learned through meditation, the idea of how tricky the mind can be, right? And the illusions, the mind playing tricks on thee, right? And I got it during a meditation one time. I was meditating deep within a meditation, and this was a long one, right? Um, within, I had a vision, right? It was totally real, that the alarm went off on the clock I was using to time the meditation, and I turned the clock off, and then I laid down, right? Um, And I don't know if I then, it's been a while, but if I kind of woke up from that or not. But lo and behold, the clock did not go off, right? I was still meditating, and that was all just a vision. That was all just my mind playing a trick on itself, right? And so if these sorts of things are happening on such subtle levels, these misperceptions, like if the mind is that fucking tricky, right? It really is a miracle that human beings have made it this fucking far without bashing all of our heads in with hammers and rocks, because uh, this is pretty miraculous that we're able to even communicate with each other enough and to keep certain consistent things around, from generation to generation, to help, to even create fucking safe cars. Well, Ralph Nader would disagree about safe cars, but relatives, some sort of semblance of safety, while doing fucking crazy shit like building airplanes, and rockets, and sending these little fucking people, fucking huge distances in these big fucking tin cans that we've built, like, and that's because of science, and learning, um, uh, to apply like scientific principles to our everyday life, might help fucking increase our intelligence, right? So says, these people I've been talking about, right? So in the notion of hypnosis of everyday life, and the idea of a state dependent information system or state dependent memory system, I wanted to kind of talk about how, um, the hypnosis, um, generally, how a lot of people think, it's just, some sort of, you got the squiggly lines and you're fucking being hypnotized by that shit, or subliminal advertising or whatever the fuck. Um, but the idea that, um, well, the breakthrough that the study of hypnosis uh, brought to people like Freud, right, and others before and after him, uh, was the notion that people have blockages, right? People are blocked, and we'll take Freud's psychoanalytic theory. He called it fixated. There are three stages that people can be fixated on, right? Like the oral, the anal, and the fucking, I don't know what the fuck ever, like, but people get fixated in different parts of human personality. And so, in other words, people are stuck in a, a couple modes of being able to express oneself, perhaps, right? And so that, uh, those that stuckness is like a blockage. There are blockages there, perhaps, right? This metaphor of a block, and um, they there is this block was caused by a trauma, right? There are traumas that occur. I mean, Otto Rank, the post Freudian psychologist, eventually brought it back to like birth trauma. Birth in and of itself is this traumatic event of which everyone is traumatized, right? And so we're constantly seeking to re-remember and integrate, as healthy as possible the pain of existence, uh, in order to stay as in the moment as possible, so we don't turn into like angry assholes and project preconceptions upon people we fucking never met before and start yelling on them because they remind us of so and such and such. You know what I mean? That's not the whole point about all this stuff. Is how do you respond to the world as in the moment as possible, like a motherfucking Jedi. You know what I mean? Like where you're not held back by the past, and you're completely open to the present of all the different new signals that exist, and that's one of the areas that Robert Anton Wilson was studying in his work, and Wilson being one of a number of different interesting thinkers that in the 20th century that were obsessed with this question, if you will. I mean, that's one of the main points of the study of psychology, right? Like the birth of psychoanalysis is this notion of how do you get through blockages within your mind to move past being stuck and to move more freely in your life, right? And so the what Freud found, or people before him too were finding, was that just like when you enter a hypnotic state, right, when people are hypnotized, they don't remember when they come out of the hypnotic state, and then the person gives them the post hypnotic suggestion and then they do something, right? I've never had this done to me. I've never done this to people. I've never been present in these things, but I've seen it on TV a lot, right? Was that the fucking comedian Dave or whatever, and he's hypnotizing people too, and motherfuckers like lifting their whatever the fuck, right? This notion though of that people don't remember that that hypnosis was happening. Well, that's an amnesia, right? So the idea that people have an amnesia around a traumatic event that occurs in their lives. So the trauma happens, and then like it's like even when you get a deep wound on your skin, the way that your skin heals, it doesn't heal in the same way texture that your skin is. A keloid process forms, where the striation of the skin is different, right? So that's a keloid, right? So same principle perhaps to the idea of your psyche, that when this trauma happens, this keloid process occurs where it makes it even harder to remember what happened, right? And this amnesia is surrounds it, right? So for Freud and psychoanalysis and these early hypnotists, well, the whole point was to help people remember, get woke, right? To see through that amnesia, right? And see what that trauma was, or the to process those original um, pains of the trauma or whatever, right? To then be able to dissolve the power that this 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 event or series of events have had on people's lives, right? um, and the a result of this trauma that one has amnesia around can be manifested in these types of neurosis, right? So Freud uh, thought that he found a technique that was more effective than hypnosis to help people get to the heart of getting woke to what their traumatic amnesias are about, he came up with free association, right? Which I feel like I've seen some videos where it's like people are using YouTube as like a form of free association or something, man. It seems to be helping. Maybe this is an outgrowth of all this shit too, right? So Freud went that area with it, like, you know, free association of words to you know, and then a trained therapist is there to help them, you know, help them point out or find these repeating patterns and then go deeper, et cetera, et cetera. But for the purposes of this particular talk, like the notion of how you know, hypnosis and hypnotherapy, when examined, really, I mean, this is one of the best books I ever read about hypnosis. This book right here, you know, when the way that this guy Rossi describes hypnosis, you know, it opens up so many more interesting questions and things to think about, especially about the idea of, you know, amnesia and like I was talking about the notion of trauma, you know, because, well, I want to keep it moving, right? In ways of what Rossi and then others found as like healing techniques, found through his work within hypnotherapy, um, to help people move through those blockages, right? Those amnesia blockages, and that's where he mentions basically the work of. I want to get this right. So, okay. So when their shocks, basically psychological shocks, are used to sometimes help people snap out of it, right? That's a basic old sort of understanding of things. But what is this idea of shock and awakening? Because shock is a recurrent theme within the work of Robert Anton Wilson too, as well as a recurrent theme in a lot of different movements, organizations, and people during the 20th century or whatever as well. And the idea that a shock is necessary, you know, presupposes that someone or groups of people are kind of within some sort of somnambulistic haze that they need to be woken up or shocked awaken, right? And the metaphors of, you know, shock, awakening, right, go a lot of different directions. I mean, Naomi Klein had that great book and then documentary, The Shock Doctrine, which she speaks about like certain libertarian economists out of the Chicago school working with, you know, Augusto Pinochet's fascist fucking dictatorship to apply, you know, these libertarian principles, these shock doctrine principles of austerity and fucking all this crazy shit on the people of Argentina, like fucking, sorry, Chile, not Argentina. Wait a minute, hold on, I gotta check Argentina and Chile. Pinochet, Argentina, Pinochet, Chile. I want to get this totally right. I don't want to fuck this up. Yeah, it was Chile. My bad. Pinochet in Chile. Right. So, you know, they applied a certain shock doctrine to the economy at that time. It didn't work. It made things worse. That shock that was applied through this you know, neoliberal proto-fascist sort of economic system that was utilized during that time, and still sort of utilized in Chile. But that's a whole other fucking discussion. The idea of shock, though, in a positive sense, being used to wake people up, even goes far back within the Zen tradition, where you're meditating and then along comes your teacher and fucking smacks you in the back of the head, and somehow this is supposed to enlighten you or some shit like that. But this metaphor goes back, right? And it could be more than a metaphor when it's used positively, right? The idea of, if I describe it maybe in the sense that Rossi would describe it, and also within the way that Wilson would describe it, new information is itself a shock. New information being defined as basically a surprise, right? Like the idea that something doesn't fit the habitual pattern, that it offers something new for you to have to respond to, right? And that is causing you to have to then pay more attention. That is the shock that I'd say Wilson is speaking about, and I'd say that is the shock that Rossi is speaking about. And these shocks also can induce or be happen in parallel to creative, like sparks of big creative moments, or say scientific breakthrough. Like all of these things are shocks, within this framework of speaking about breaking trance. Because ultimately, this is one of the arguments where Wilson goes with hypnosis, is that, and this comes out a lot in his book Illuminatus trilogy. Generally, it's the character Hagbar Chalene, who's like, fucking woking people left and right, just boom, 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 you're awake, you're awake, you're awake. And he was a stage magician, Hagbar Chalene, the character in Illuminatus trilogy. And, one of the things that he does is he pulls these little shocking kind of Dadaist tricks on people to wake them up, right? And Wilson definitely, at least if this wasn't early in his career, he gets it later in his career. This influence from Gurdjieff, G.I. Gurdjieff, the Armenian mystic, who often speaks about the robot and people sleepwalking through life, right, moving along in certain somnambulistic hazes, right, and cliches aid in somnambulistic hazes. Near feel far flung, we stay we stay baited, not stated correctly. In other words, they vex me. Anesthetize all up to your eyes. You know what I mean? Like the notion that we can be easily swayed, especially when we lose the ballast of grounded sense of self, right? And as we, go further and further in this new era of, like, and I keep saying it because it's coming, man. This totally, or increasingly embedded, technological, interneted, networked mind. People are, not only going to be asking, where is my mind, but where is myself, right? Like, who am I in all this, right? And if we are able to, increase our knowledge and capacity of all these other metaphors, all these different metaphors for analyzing the, the inner workings of our inner environments, that could help increase our ability to make sense of, where the Wilson called it the Great Mind Symphony. And, people have been studying the mind to help liberate the mind, and people have been studying the mind to help figure out how to sell more fucking useless shit, right? And that useless shit can be war, and it can be a new fucking brand of toothpaste or some shit. You know what I mean? And it's just everyone's responsibility to learn how to operate their nervous system as efficiently as possible, especially when we are living in this age of intensely increasing information. And you can't you can't run from it. You know, the ostrich theory, right? You can't just put your head in the sand. Like, we are all on this trip now, right? And everyone's perspective is extremely important, you know. But that the prerequisite is, you know, the idea of, well, like, are you even a self yet if you can't fucking represent and define yourself in your time and place of where you're at right now in this three-dimensional space, right? And then your interdimensional fucking, like, your quantum psychology self, you know. And when we are and I'd say Wilson, this is one of the things that Wilson is saying about this analyzing of hypnosis. um, when when we are moving along to the beat of someone else's drummer, putting it very simply, right? We're essentially, quite possibly, if we're not totally aware of it, we are functioning in a state of hypnosis, right? When you're getting cued along and steered, um, you know, I'm sure many defense attorneys would love this theory, right? Because when you're saying that you're in a state of hypnosis, well, where's your sense? Where's your agency, right? And these are all very troubling uh, notions when it comes to the jurisprudence system, right? The idea of justice and the idea of the individual that is punished for this crime, et cetera, et cetera. And please don't get me wrong. There are definitely some fucking people that need to go to jail when they do fucked up shit, you know. But when we're meditating on this pulling back right now, what this meditation is what this is a meditation on, like, the civilization right now, right? Like, we're just observing all this like anthropologists, you know what I mean? Keyboard anthropologist, Prop Anonymous, the illest keyboard anthropologist, rap phenomenologist, letting motherfuckers know off the top of the head. Like a gynecologist. Oh, who is that? Dropping bombs with the motherfucking weed plant. Yo, by the way, I'm open to sponsors, man. I'm open to weed sponsors. All right. Pacific Stone 805 Sour is the best sativa I've smoked in California yet, man. You know what I mean? So Pacific Stone, you want to bless me with some sponsorship weed? That'd be much appreciated. But anyway, this is a loose wrap right here, man. Grand affair, peace. Right on, brother. Hope you are well. You know what I mean? Just this notion of just a way of thinking about, you know, when say you think retrospectively, right? Like, maybe your teenage years or whatever, you think like, God damn, why the fuck did I go with that motherfucker to do that shit? How did that motherfucker get me to do that shit? Well, maybe you were hypnotized in one sense, right? uh Follow me on this, right? Where the notion of a hypnotism is this psychobiological, psychosomatic trance. Like, you zone out a bit. You know, where are you when you're zoning out, right? So this is where, speaking of hypnosis, intersecting with the idea of social anxiety works very well, right? Um, Social situations, one you know, you could be totally fine by yourself, right? Then all of a sudden you're driving to the spot, right? And you're thinking of all the people, your back starts sweating, you're sweating like crazy, you're nervous, your heart rate is accelerating. Like, oh shit, you didn't even know you got like a type of social anxiety. You weren't even aware of that, right? Because this is just how amnesias work. And when we have this amnesia about these states that we enter, right? That itself it would be considered the hypnosis. You know what I mean? Like, so that's the trance to wake from. That then is the idea of the conditioning to decondition, the programming to decondition from, right? The trance to get woke from, right? And as you notice, there are amnesias that exist within self and then within culture, within society, right? And in a place like America, oh, there's a ton of amnesias. You know what I mean? Like there's a ton of shit we gotta people just constantly get woke from, you know? And now the question though is um, for well then how are we able to further decipher the new information, right? To know what I'm saying is based in some sort of repeatable experimental fucking be I don't know something that you get the same results right by repeating the same behavior that say I'm laying out, right? That's the notion of applying the scientific method to everyday life, right? And if we're able to continue doing this, right, waking from these sort of hypnotic trances, you know, clarity, uh, you know, I'm in a hypnotic trance right now, man. Let me refocus for a second. I'm getting all worked up here, going off on a tangent. There's so much that I really would like to say about this. I think this is why I'm kind of swerving over the map here, speaking about this. And I wanted to just leave it at that, and then build on it later on. Keep building on this notion of state dependent information systems as this notion of trance states that people need to wake up from. But like I said, man, I think I need to smoke because I think I'm in a trance state right now, man. I want to refocus on this book right here, and it being, again, these studies of your internal environments for then how we interact with the environment as a whole, you know, when we, because the importance is community, right? And I'll leave it at this, right? Like where we are headed, right? And what COVID has brought about is a further type of alienation. And this alienation might reach a tipping point where people don't even want to fuck with each other anymore and will happily welcome these fucking silicone mediations for dealing with each other, you know? And that's not the way, that's not the way to go with this, you know? It's about learning how to create like the better a community that is able to, you know, act as a vessel for all these new signals of information, right? For every voice to be heard, right? That is what the ideals of democracy and a plural democracy is about, you know. And that's the struggle, right? And that's the struggle, you know. And so long as we stay ignorant to you know, basic principles of making sense of the world around us, right, the greatest, most nefarious conspiracy of all will continue, you know, and that's the conspiracy of stupidity. You know what I mean? So shout out to everyone who watched tonight. You know what I mean? Thank you. We're coming on the hour. I will report back tomorrow with another program, maybe further meditations on the idea of environment as a whole. We'll see where that goes. And yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching tonight. All right. Peace.